All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. I'm your host, Mark Champagne, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today, we've got a real treat. We've got Elliott, who is the co-founder of Summit Group, whose family of organizations includes Powder Mountain, Summit Series, Summit Junto, and Summit Impact. Along with his co-founders, Elliott just published their first book, Make No Small Plans, Lessons on Thinking Big, Chasing Dreams, and Building Community. Man, I reached out to Elliott because this book was one of those, I don't listen to a ton of audiobooks, but for whatever reason, I picked up this one and I was done in like 2.5 days. So damn good. Welcome to the show.
I love it. Thank you. Here we go. I'm excited to chat.
There's just so many places that we could start. There's so many stories, past, current, and I'm sure ongoing right now. But just to stay with the flavor of this show, I'll open it up with the same question everyone gets. And that's just, if you put away your work, titles, everything like that aside, who are you? What defines you?
Oh my gosh. I'm a full of energy, eccentric, a fun-loving, make the most of every day kind of person. So I have a 3.5-year-old, and from the moment he wakes up every day, da, mama, I jump out of bed and I'm just go, go, go. And I just feel very lucky in general to be alive and to be able to do all the fun things and exciting and good things there are to do in the world. And I kind of approach everything with the mindset that this is going to be really fun. Like that's like the main theme of my life is I always saw the Forbes 400 list and thought it was really strange and kind of disgusting that there was a list of people ranked on one thing, how much money they had. And I always thought, I want to be on the Forbes 400 list of fun.
Yes.
The fun list.
It.
And I think I try, just to bring fun and humor in my life. And so, that's also our brand, the Summit brand, right? We put on, surreal, epic, exciting events. We, try to build community. Powder Mountain, the ski resort, is all about, living your best day, whether you're just learning to ski or, you're hitting your favorite runs you've been skiing for 30 years. So that's me. And I have like 50 hobbies and I'm into a lot of things. And frankly, anything new can get me extremely excited.
I love it. Well, let's talk about new. I mean, three-year-old. I mean, I have a 6-month-old and a 6-year-old. So I totally understand or resonate with young people with young children. I'm just curious, like what, being a dad and having a 3-year-old, like what's surprised you so far about that journey?
Well, when the kid is really young, like a baby, I realized one day that all the principles you might try to learn from the Buddha or the Dalai Lama or some spiritual advisor, like to be present and have joy in your soul and look people, deeply into their eyes and to have no judgment. Like when you first have a baby, I realized one day, like, oh my gosh, like the baby is like way more dialed in than the Buddha or the Dalai Lama. Like this is it. I am meeting God.
You're meeting presence.
that was my, realization as a baby. And then, as the personality develops, they have things that they get into. And I think like just where I am right now, it's become so apparent our ability to nurture and shape their lives. And that the time we put in really, really matters. And without those things, they just may not have any realization of what animals are or nature. Or like I'll get a friend will say, you should really teach your kid the ABC song. We thought, oh my gosh, like we hadn't done that. And then like 2 days later, they know the song.
Yeah.
Or you should teach them how to swim, or, oh my gosh, we hadn't done, whatever the things are. So, and look, it just teaches like the ultimate patience, like your entire life is in service to someone else.
Hmm.
and you get to see the world through their eyes. And I'll just say, lastly, it's the ultimate test of what else you're doing in the world, because since you now always have the greatest possible experience waiting for you at home, anything you do has to be comparable to that. So I think a
Mm.
lot of the time wasting things and a lot of things that are not important fall to the wayside when you're as like, really? Like, I did that boring meeting, or went to that windowless conference room, or
Yeah.
flew to this faraway place, like, and I could have been home with the kid. And so it like totally reorients the priorities.
That's fascinating because, you know, even if you put that aside, or that perspective aside, I mean, the one thing that, there's so many things, but the one thing that really stands out to me is just like the work that you guys do, and especially your backstory. Like, everything is at times 1,000. I mean, let's buy a mountain. Let's I don't even, what's the terminology, to rent a cruise ship? Like, is that do you lease the boat? Like, how does that even work? But I mean, I guess my point is, like, everything is grandiose in a way, right? And I mean, that's got to make for prioritizing tasks and projects and like the next events and stuff like that, that to make at least you feel well, that, or feel good that, hey, if I'm not going to be at home with my 3-year-old, spending time there, like, I'm doing something pretty big that has a ripple effect uh, to help a lot of awesome humans, right?
It's called chartering a ship. And
Okay, is that what it is? Okay.
if if anyone wants to start small, you could charter a little boat for hire for $95 maybe on your local lake. Um, or, and I think that pretty much any venue or cruise ship is available for charter. And as it gets bigger, the charter gets more expensive. So I think what you're referring to is our annual event, Summit at Sea, which started in 2011, where we take over a cruise ship and get thousands of creatives and dreamers and entrepreneurs and artists and just excitable people together, and then we build our version of kind of a music, content, and arts festival. So you can see
Yeah.
music all night, you can go to amazing content all day, and you just have this incredible, wild, surreal experience at sea. So that's one of Summit's best known annual events is
Yeah.
Summit at Sea, which, when
You've
we
got
started,
another one, right? Coming up next year? Did
we
you
have
say?
one in 2023, and this year in 2022, we have Summit Palm Desert, where we take over the La Quinta Hotel in Palm Springs. But we've been doing, we've done hundreds of events, over the years, and we've done events all over the world, from small events, in the jungle in Costa Rica to, events in our nation's capital, events in Kenya, all over the place, Miami. And, again, we're a community company. Like, our favorite thing in the world is gathering kind, entrepreneurial people and bringing them together. And I think the magic of the events is when the community starts to connect with each other, as well as, then, getting that inspiration in person from engaging in content sessions. Like, there's unlimited content online, and there's something about coming together in person that it can really move you, right? It's like, we love listening to music. Everyone loves listening to music at home, but there's a reason people go to a concert. It's not either or. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to just go to concerts or just listen to music at home. But there's a reason that, a few times a year, or half a dozen times a year, you like to get in person and feel the bass and be in that room and feel that energy to, see your favorite bands.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about how this all started, because I mean, it definitely didn't start with you chartering a cruise ship. I mean, if I think back, and this is like, I almost remember this just to every level of detail. In the car, I was driving with my wife, and we had the 2 kids in the back, and the audiobook, or you were, just because you're narrating the audiobook and describing that first event where your mom was helping you plan it out. I think you arrived at the location with like a 6-pack of beer type thing, and like wondering, oh, do we have granola bars? Or like, it was hilarious. And if anyone listening, I mean, I don't normally go crazy trying to promote books. So usually we just have, conversation around, and obviously the story will lead people to the book if they want to go there. But this one, you have to go read the damn book or listen to the book, because it's like one of those situations where you're either laughing your ass off or just completely inspired to think bigger, and then often both at the same time, which, I mean, there's just no downside to experiencing what you guys put together. So, I mean, please share that opening story and basically how Summit began.
Yeah, well, I mean, what happened is that I had started a business with my dad. I was in my dorm room. This was his first entrepreneurial endeavor. He had had a totally different career before that. And I had decided to drop out of college and move into my childhood bedroom and build this business. And I realized after a few months or 6 months that I did not know anything about business. I could sell. That's kind of, through pure determination and, grit by just waking up early. But I didn't know any sales tactics. I didn't know how to build a sales team. I certainly didn't know how to market. I did not have any design experience. I didn't know the first thing about finding office space or building company culture. And so it was through this realization that happened over, a period of months that I realized, wow, I'm really clueless. Like, I have no idea what to do. I mean, I have this dream in front of me to build this business, and I'm going to need to acquire some skills.
Sure.
And I decided to cold call people that I'd read about in, Inc. magazine or Entrepreneur magazine, just like anyone else reads articles on startups. I decided to cold call them, and not famous people, just, other young folks with startups. And so I literally cold called, Blake Mykoski, the founder of Tom's Shoes, and Ricky and Josh, who'd started, College Humor and Vimeo. And I called people like that. And I cold called someone who had created an email newsletter business, and, just interesting people. And I pitched them, hey, I'm going to do, our own version of a business conference. And we'll get, 20 people together. And I'm also an entrepreneur. Like, I have a small business, and, we had a couple $100,000 in revenue, and, we're going to get together. We'll meet new folks. And I said, I think we all feel like islands out there, like in the 10,000 islands. Like, we know there's other islands, but we can't see them.
Yeah.
And maybe the event would be like, climbing up 50 feet into a tree and being able to suddenly see the islands and actually connect, because I'm totally isolated. And this was all in, 2007, 2008, 2009. And there was this new entrepreneurial movement that was built on the back of the iPhone App Store, when suddenly anyone could build a business.
Yeah.
Right. And suddenly, as soon as that iPhone launched and the App Store, like, all these things were being revolutionized, and, the direct to consumer, the, D2C revolution was happening, where like today, all the products we use are these cool new things that came out, whether it's what you drink or how you clean your house, whatever it is. This was all new. This was like a brand new revolution. And so it was an explosion of startups and ideas and creativity. And none of these folks got invited to big events. I don't think they'd ever been to big events. And so I told them I'd cover the airfare and I would rent a house. And I started getting people saying yes. And then I didn't know how to rent a house, and there was certainly no Airbnb. I'd never been on a vacation outside of one that my mom planned. So I asked her to help me find a house. And then I didn't have any money for the trip. So I thought, I think I could get some sponsors. If we're going to have folks who own businesses, maybe a real estate firm would want to sponsor it. And my friend Steve Berman, who had worked at our high school, and then now as a real estate broker, I reached out, and he was an associate broker at Jones Lang LaSalle. And I said, you could come on the trip and meet these folks and then maybe do their office space deals. Okay. And he got his firm to give us $10,000. And, by the way, on the first trip, like Sam Altman, who went on to run Y Combinator, was on the trip. And then on the next trip, people like Tony Hsieh from Zappos, who, these people had like hundreds of thousands of square feet of space, right? And I got a friend, Scott, who was at a venture fund. I'd only met him one time. I said, maybe you could come on the trip and then give us $10,000 to cover the cost of the trip, and you could meet potential companies to invest in. So I built this trip of 20 really interesting startup founders. Nobody was particularly well known at the time.
Yeah.
And
Why
then
did they trust you though, Elliott? Like, why do you think they're like, okay, yeah, we don't normally go to these events, but here's some guy, he's gonna fly us out, and we don't really know what we're in
so
for.
what happened is that I initially actually called a local group of people who were kind of entrepreneurial, but they knew me, but they weren't. They worked at traditional jobs, and I pitched them, and they actually didn't trust me. And I called the person at the law firm, and I called the person who worked at a office furniture business, and I called someone I knew who worked at AARP, the Association for the Advancement of Retired People. I think that's what AARP stands for. And I called someone at like some insurance company. And they said, why would I let you plan a trip with people I don't know? Like, you can barely sell me ads. Like, do you think I want to go on a trip? So I actually tried to call people I knew. And it was very interesting because I was met with total and utter rejection. I mean, one person I kept calling, and finally I reached them and I said, do you want to come? And they said, if I wanted to come, I would have taken your calls. And someone else said, well, why don't we just get together in DC? It's where I was living, Washington, D.C. I said, that's not the point.
Yeah.
We want to do this entrepreneurs trip. And they said, look, you can't barely sell ads. Like, if I want to do a trip, I'm going to go with people I know, and I'm going to let a professional plan it. So the answer is these people didn't trust me. But then this very interesting thing happened. And, Summit was born really in the moment that I realized I needed a more outlandish list of names.
Okay.
I needed bigger names. I needed entrepreneurs. And when I called the first entrepreneurs, what happened is very obvious in retrospect. But even though these people were harder to reach, I never met them. And on the surface, they were running companies with 5 employees, 25 employees, some with 100. Here's the thing. They were entrepreneurial. They took risks. So when they heard the random kid in DC calling and say, hey, I also have a business. I have 5 employees. I'm trying to meet other entrepreneurs. I'm doing this trip. They actually said things like, even if the trip is a disaster, we have a friend who lives out in Utah and their family has a house. So even in a worst case, Elliott, this bozo, will fly us out for free. And we'll go hang at our friend's house. Yeah. Sure. And in fact, one of them introduced us to their friend who ended up coming. And so, or Blake from Tom's Shoes, he thought, I love skiing. So, I'll get a free plane ticket out of it. Maybe I'll meet some interesting people. Maybe I won't like Elliott. Maybe I will. It doesn't really matter. But I respect him for trying to pull this off. And so they started saying yes, because they had kind of an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, they asked themselves, what is the worst thing that could happen? Well, nothing. You just get a free, literally the worst case is a free trip out, meet a couple interesting people, and go check yourself into a hotel for a few days or stay at a friend's house. So they said yes. And my mom, like I said, my mom helped me book the trip. When all the sponsor dollars came in, I didn't have money for multiple houses. So I had everybody share rooms, and everybody showed up. I was literally had just turned 21. There's 20 people, so I bought a 24 pack of beer, and they swung open the fridge and they thought like, oh my gosh, like Elliott has no idea what he's doing. And then they went for their rooming assignments. I said, great. I read about you and I read about you. So I put you guys together and you're going to be in this room. They're like, what, you want me to share a room with this person I never met? I was like, yes, we're reading. And, the first day was just, and the first hours were just deep, deep awkwardness. Sure. I think people wondering if they should leave, if they should stay. And then what started to happen is they started to meet the other people. And in those hours of meeting the other people, they thought, wow, these are really interesting people. And I am only 23, so I certainly don't mind sharing a room with other people. And wow, could be really good. And so we went out to dinner the first night, and there are really like two things that kind of got everyone through all the awkwardness. The first is that at the dinner, I booked this fancy restaurant and there's this table that we're all at this big table. And when I went to the bathroom, the founders of College Humor decided to play a prank on me. And they carried these heavy white laminated business cards, like heavy. You could feel the weight in your hand. It must be like $5 a card, level heavy, like you'd get in an investment bank if you went for a meeting or something. And the card said, "Your attire is not appropriate to the standards of the club, and we ask that you change immediately." And then under had a line and it said management. And so when I went to the bathroom, they called over the maitre d', like the host at the restaurant. They said, "When this kid comes back, just hand him the card and walk away." So awesome. I came back and everyone was in on it. They said, "Take it very seriously." So the whole table now has this collective prank on me. And I came back, I sat down, the maitre d' walked over, gave an award-winning performance, and they said, "I'm so sorry, sir." And they handed the card in front of me, and everyone looked over and said, "What was that? Like, what does the card say?" And I read the card, "Your attire is not appropriate to the standards of the club, and we ask that you change immediately. Management." And I'm like, what the heck? And then everyone just started piling on, like, wow, this is really serious. And like, you're going to probably get all of us kicked out. Like, why would you be so disrespectful?
What were you thinking in that moment? Like, how are you feeling? Are you freaking out?
I started asking questions like, my shirt's the same as your shirt. And they're like, well, you can just look at my shirt. It's not the same. Like, mine is gray and yours is white. Or I'm like, what do you, but I have a collared shirt and he has a t-shirt. It's not always about a collar. It could be just, it's not a nice quality. Like, have you ever been to the Cannes Film Festival? They'll kick people out because they have ripped jeans. I'm like, I've never been to the Cannes Film Festival. And it's like, well, maybe you're about to get kicked out of here. Like, you need to go find a store to buy a new shirt. I'm like, it's 9:30. There are no stores. Like, well, then go get the car warmed up and we'll meet you outside in a couple hours.
Amazing.
And then it was just like and then finally everyone burst into laughter. And that really like blew the lid off, right? When everyone is engaged in, shared dynamic experiences. Mm-hmm. And then the second part, Mark, is just, had to drive home, and I had rented a big Suburban, however many people fit, like 2 in the front, and then there's all the multiple rows. I don't know if it's 9 or whatever the number is. And I came out of Park City where the event was, it said no left turn, but there were no cars coming. And you could literally see, it was just on a 2-lane road.
Yeah.
And I just turned left at midnight. And as soon as I did, the siren came and I pulled over. And in that moment, like that long wait that we all know, when you get pulled over, everyone just started hounding me. Like, you're going to jail, your event's over, but it's fine because I'm going to take over the event. Don't worry. Just, hurry, give me your mom's contact information. I'll coordinate the house with her, and I was like, guys, quiet, shut up. The cops, and I think, and of course I got a ticket or a warning or whatever I got. And, from that point on, it was just everyone's laughing and totally on the same flow. And look, just to wrap this thread, the main takeaway is, would it have been better to not do the event, to avoid the awkwardness, to avoid the embarrassment, to avoid all the no's? Or would it have been, or was it better that I actually did it? And the answer is just so obvious. The first step is taking the first step. Yeah. And if you can kind of internalize and get through the sense of, shame or embarrassment, it's almost always worth taking little risks with little downside. Like, there wasn't a lot of downside. I got sponsors to cover it. Like, worst case, I just wouldn't have done Summit ever again. And guess what? I had never done Summit before, and I didn't know the people. So that was it, Mark.
It's such a good. As I'm sure people are listening now, like that opens the book essentially, and like you're hooked in. And there's just so many stories like that, in their own kind of style and theme. But because I think either I read this in the book or It's definitely in Alex's book, The Third Door, mutual friend of ours in contact, where there's a quote in there from you just saying, like, always bite off more than you can chew, and something to the effect that you figure out how to chew later, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that is Summit in a way. Like, I mean, it's not like you guys knew how to charter a cruise ship and figure out, like, there's a Wi-Fi scenario with that. There's just so many unknowns and troubleshooting that has to take place. I guess the question I'd love to ask you, since you put on quite a few events and you continue to, disrupt thinking in this space, like, what kind of questions are you and the team, like, what are you guys asking or reflecting on when you're thinking of the next event? Like, how do you get to that ideation and that dreaming, almost for like making the impossible possible?
I think our story, Mark, is a good one because it's very relatable, right? Like, we were not tech geniuses. We didn't go to Ivy League schools. Two of us didn't graduate from college. And putting on events, it just seems like something that almost anybody can do. Like, and it makes sense how events get put on. And I think, if we were to pause right now and just think about, the products that we use and what was kind of obvious in retrospect. Was it obvious that, the taxi industry would be revolutionized by Uber? Was it obvious that, one big company like Zadok owns all of eyewear, and that, Warby Parker could come in and you could actually buy $95 glasses instead of spending $500?
Yeah.
You can kind of, like, was it obvious that, like, the soaps and detergents we use are, like, poorly branded and chemical laced, and that there should be like an eco brand, like Method, right? Yeah. And you can just go on and on and on. Is it, obvious that, the bed sheets industry is a disaster, and who wants to go to, Bed Bath and Beyond, and, instead, Boll and Branch came along, and there's, like, the coolest, hippest, all organic brand for the bedroom. These just go on forever, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at events and business events, it's the same thing. Like, you can just ask yourself, like, how is the experience of business events? What are these events like? And, until, Summit started, like, we had never heard of really fun, exciting business events, right? That cater to their audience. There's a reason why, like, an older generation of first-time social media users were on Facebook, and then the next generation was on Instagram, and the new generations never even used Instagram. They just went straight to TikTok, right? Yeah. Let alone use Facebook, right? Because these different products are built for different people, and so new subsets and demographics of people use those products.
Gotcha.
Right. There's a generation, I would say there's a generation of people who would never use a cleaning product other than an organic eco product. Like, they've never even used some of these big brands that, we grew up using. And so just the thread on the event is there were no fun business events. The event started at 8 a.m. They ended at 4 p.m. They were, people talked at you from a stage. They were basically all men. There was no effort to have any diversity from socioeconomic, gender, ethnicity. There was no music at night. And if it was, it'd be some knockoff cover band, 80s knockoff cover band. Like, there was, like, we are a music, content, arts festival. And our idea was, this is the Summit thesis. There's a new generation of entrepreneurs growing every day. Any person in the world can join this subset of people by becoming an entrepreneur and building something, joining a startup, or within their company, be an entrepreneur. There's a generation of people ever expanding. It is critical to build community and for those people to connect with each other. Where would those people like to connect? Do they want to go to some fancy hotel and eat, overpriced steak dinners and, listen to people lecture them? Or do they want to go to an experience? And Summit is built on the idea of reimagining what the business event can be.
Love it. I mean, thanks for sharing those details. Hello, everyone. I first wanted to say thanks for being here, and I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to let you know, if you're interested, I just launched the Better Questions newsletter designed to provide you with a consistent 15-minute opportunity to pause and think, because a pause leads to clarity and operating with intention, where we all win and thrive. The newsletter is short, simple, and practical, providing with 3 quality reflective prompts and mental fitness twice a month. But as always, I'll adjust the frequency based on your feedback. Never forget, at any point, you are always one question away from a completely different life or outcome. You can sign up over at behindthehuman.com, which will also give you a free preview of my debut book, Personal Socrates. Behindthehuman.com. Now back to the show. I'm going to stick with this, and because historically, absolutely, the business events for the most part sucked. Let's just put it frankly, right? I mean, they weren't the most fun. And like, hey, let's sign up, let's go here. Now they don't suck, largely part because of the work that you and the team are doing. But like, I guess what I'd love to know is, how do you, for you personally, and I mean, I know there's a team, but for you personally, how do you start reimagining next year? Or, you've got Virgin coming up, or that cruise ship line, and that whole event. Like, after that, because you're putting on the gold standard essentially. Like, what's the thought process, or some of the questions that come up to be like, okay, well, like, what's next?
Well, our goal is to have a diverse offering of events, because everybody's different. So,
Yeah.
Over the years, we've done small events for maybe 100 people, 125 people at Powder Mountain, really family focused, deep in nature. We've done our Summit at Sea events, which is a lot more music, a lot more late nights, a lot more rah-rah. Of course, we have our summit themes and content and healthy living throughout everything. We have our Palm Desert event this fall. It's a bit smaller than Summit at Sea. And, the desert is a quiet place. It's more introspective. I think the music is less rah-rah, and there's, more deep vibes. We had an event in Tulum throughout the years that we did until recently. And so I think the different events allow for people to self-select into what fits them, right? So even within the entrepreneurial ecosystem, we've tried to have different offerings. And now, for example, we have something we launched like a year and a half ago called Summit Junto, which is the summit version of the forum. Like, people have been getting together in forums for a long time. There's lots of forums. And we thought, hey, there's not really a forum that fits this entrepreneurial demographic. Like, forums take 3 hours. They're always in the same city. Our community's traveling. They're moving. Forums are very expensive. Let's do one that's, a third the price, 90 minutes once a month, and it's all virtual, and you can meet up at the summit events or meet up in person once or twice a year. And so, someone, events aren't for them, Summit Junto could be for them. So we have tried to build this diverse offering, and then we just, we try to build everything from the inside by asking ourselves, are these sessions or artists, is this an experience we want to go to? Do we want to sit in this? What do we want? Who do we want to listen to, right? And so, we're constantly asking our team, the whole team, what content is most relevant and most exciting?
Yeah.
What kind of speakers are interesting? So, we think of ourselves as like a music manager who's trying to sign, or a record label trying to sign the next new artists. Except, we're not signing anyone, of course. We're just trying to figure out who would be most interesting and appealing for our community to listen to. And we really do focus on kind of who's up and coming versus people who are already famous. For the most part, we do have some well-known people, but we really pride ourselves in kind of who's next.
Yeah. I love that question, because I think it's so relatable to so many different facets of life, and also our professional lives and work and whatnot, just around the idea, like, is this experience, or is this thing I'm working on, like, something I would want to experience or use? Because it's so easy to get, fast forwarded into, like, okay, everyone would like this, that, but just to take a quick pause and do a little reflection on, like, well, wait a second, like, would I actually like this? Like, right? What, like, why are we doing this? it's just, I think it's just a great question to pause the autopilot that often starts up.
Yeah, I mean, we did the same thing with our book. Like, what kind of book do we want to read? Okay, we want a page-turning, punchy, fun book that when you get to the end, you think, that's it, it's already over. We
Yeah.
want every chapter to leave you hanging, feeling, what's about to happen in the next chapter? And we don't want a single slow part of the book because we
I can
know
attest to
that will
that.
have people stop reading. So for us, the book was just about like cutting, keeping it as punchy as possible. When we had the good stories, putting in more effort than we knew we had to make those stories alive with quotes and action and
Yeah.
recreate all the scenes. So I think in general we're always asking ourselves, how can we make things better? How can we make things exciting? And yeah, is this a book we want to read? Or is this an event that we want to attend? Do I want to be in Summit Junto and do this forum every month for an hour and a half? Is it the thing that I most look forward to? Or is it, is there something about it that's kind of wearing on me and I'm not going to continue?
Yeah.
And so we're constantly, iterating on the product. And I think the best entrepreneurs are obsessed with the product, right? And all products are living and breathing. And I think just a good takeaway is I think everybody accepts that for tech products. The iPhone needs to keep getting better. The cars need to keep getting better, right? The software needs to keep getting better. But often for physical products, the companies are just less innovative. Like, it's okay that events haven't changed. It's okay that, baseball bats or tennis rackets or golf clubs are, haven't changed.
Yeah.
Again, they have changed, but there's generally more lag, right? There's less of like a total focus on product. And so I think for events, that's something that we really think about.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes me think of, I'm sure the company and the founders, but of Matteo from 8 Sleep. And he was on the show at one point and just made me pause for a second. And he's like, in the space of mattresses, something that we spend, a minimum or supposed to at least minimum of 8 hours a day on, the actual product hasn't really been innovated on for 100 years. It's like the same damn, like, just lie on this cushion type scenario for how long, right? And it's funny because, like, you don't think of these things until someone plants a seed in terms of the way that you're positioning this, right? Like, well, wait a second, can this be better? And the answer is usually yes, right? It's wild. I'd love to ask you, just back to the book, is there a story in there that, or is there a story I should say that you wanted in there that didn't make the cut that you would love to share? So I'm sure there are a lot that obviously just from a book capacity standpoint, you couldn't put everything in there, but is there one that comes to mind?
Yeah, there's a zillion. I mean, I think that, when we decided how to write the book, we decided that the most interesting, wild, reckless, not that reckless, but just total, audacious time was the first 5 years of Summit, kind of when I was, 21 to 26 years old. And so we really focused on that. The book ends in 2013. And so it's really like a classic book. It ends the day that we buy Powder Mountain, which is 10 years ago. And it's just action packed, right? Because we went from no connections, no relationships, no revenue, no business to, building this events company, building the Summit brand, building a team of dozens of people. And then ultimately at the end of the book, putting together this deal to buy and, steward and own Powder Mountain Ski Resort. And so, we really focused on, that very early time. Mm-hmm. There was a really good story we took out of the book. I was at the National Economic Club in Washington, D.C. Okay. And I was 22 years old. And this is like a very prestigious group. I don't know how many thousands of dollars a year it costs to pay in dues or if you can even get in. But I was trying to sell advertising for the newsletter business I started with my dad. And I was trying to drum up clients everywhere. And in fact, every night I would go to about 5 events for, 45 minutes each, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then I would just sweep the event, getting as many business cards as I could. I was like casino floor Elliott. Hi, Mark. Nice to meet you. How you doing? What are you working on? Great. I think, I'd love to follow up with you over a lunch or a coffee. I think you may be really interested in advertising with our business. Like, I was just selling ads.
You were the guy.
Yeah, I was just selling ads to anyone who would listen. And so there's this group called the National Economic Club, and every month they have a very, very prestigious speaker. Okay, it's like really famous. Bill Gates has spoke, and Jeff Bezos, and there's the chairman is always really, really famous. I think the chairman's like David Rubenstein, the founder of the Carlyle Group, like one of the world's largest private equity funds. So I wrangle a ticket to the National Economic Club, and there's 1,000 people in a really fancy hotel in Washington, D.C. And, it's like 50 rows back. And, of course, I'm not content on just getting every single person's business card, but I have to sit near the front. So I get into in the first 10 rows. And David Rubenstein is interviewing Larry Summers, who at the time was running the National Economic Council, for Obama. And this is like in 2008 or 2009, and like the economy's crashing. He's like the most important person on economic policy in America. And on stage is David Rubenstein and Larry Summers. And this was when the stimulus was happening, the bailout stimulus, and people were really upset. And so about 20 minutes into their interview, protesters came onto the stage. And it was just 3 protesters, but I guess they had somehow also snuck in. So maybe the people who basically wrangled their way to the economic club were me plus 3 protesters.
Yeah.
And they went onto the stage and they had this big banner. And, I think they were upset, I believe, about the bailout of the auto companies, right? Like these super profitable businesses that had taken all this money and dividends and for shareholders. And now they wanted the government, which is the people's money, to save them. So I think that's what the protest was about. But anyway, these protesters, Mark, they came onto the stage and they started chanting, you won't save, the automakers, go back to where you came from, kind of go away, go away, go away, kind of like, and they're like in this like rhythmic chant, Larry Summers, go away, you're not welcome here. Larry Summers, go away, you're not welcome here. And like, they're just chanting this, and I didn't know what the protest was about at the time. I had no idea. I was 22. I didn't even understand economic policy. I had dropped out of college, and there's 1,000 people in the room, Mark. Okay. And the banner, they walked out and they unfurled this big banner. It's like 8 feet tall and like 20 feet wide, right? Like they walked up the stairs and one person goes first and they pull the banner wide and you can't even see Larry Summers and David Rubenstein. They're just behind. And for whatever reason, there was no security at the National Economic Club. Like you would think Larry Summers would have security or David Rubenstein, or if they did, they were outside the door, but there was none. And this went on for like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and nobody did anything. And we have this quote we think about, chances aren't given. They're taken like interceptions.
I can't wait to see where this is going.
And so I got out of my seat and I walked up to the stage in front of 1,000 people. And I just walked up to the protesters and I said, all right, thank you guys so much. It's time to go. And they were assuming, I think the protesters had been there so long, they were assuming I was security. Because there's no violence. It was just there's no issue with the protest. They made their point. 1,000 business leaders saw what they wanted to say. They made their point in the stimulus and then they were ready to go. And I walked on the stage and said, all right, it's time to go. Let's head out. And, I had been trying, Mark, for months to connect with David Rubenstein and Larry Summers. Maybe David Rubenstein wanted to buy advertising. Maybe Larry Summers wanted to be my friend. So I shuffled them off. And in that moment, I'm shuffling them off. The crowd is to the right, and to the left is Larry Summers' David Rubenstein. And I look back, I make eye contact with Larry Summers first, I give him a wink, I make contact with David Rubenstein next, say you're welcome, see you around, and I walk the protesters off. So thus began my improbable friendship and connection with both of them. Because the next time that I saw them, I said, hey, Larry, you remember, because I was going to all these events. So instead of I'm a nobody, the next time I saw him, hey, Larry, I was at the National Economic Club. I was the one who took the protesters off. Remember, I gave you a wink. How are you? Oh my gosh, Elliott, come on in. Full hugs. I once crashed not crashed, but I got invited to play a tennis pro-am in the Hamptons. I'd never been to the Hamptons, but I figured I could get some advertising clients. And it was like 25 of like the wealthiest, most successful people I've ever been around. And Larry Summers was there. And they said, all right, let's pair everyone up for doubles. And I'm telling you, I'm like 22 with no connections, no resource. In front of everyone, Larry goes, I'm going to take Elliott Bisnow to be my partner.
I love it.
One day, and I'll just wrap this story. A few years later, David Rubenstein, I got a email from his assistant. She said, David Rubenstein would love you to come meet with him at his office at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'm like, God, I didn't even graduate from college. Why could he possibly, he owns the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence. Why could he possibly want me to come to his office? Wow. Okay, I put on my suit and tie, go into his office, said, Elliott, I was thinking, you're entrepreneurial. You've obviously learned a lot. You came up, you saved us at the event. I have a young son. I would love you to connect with him. He could really go, stand to learn from a young man like yourself. I said, that's it. He said, that's it. I said, all right, great. Well, the meeting's half an hour, so let's use the other 29 minutes and chat. I got a bunch of questions.
Sure.
But I think
and advertising.
That whole, you want to buy some ads? But I think that whole story and all that silliness of how, is like very indicative of my life and kind of my entrepreneurial qualities and what would have happened if I hadn't taken that chance to stand up. I never would have met those two people.
Yeah.
And what was the worst thing that could happen? Really nothing. I don't know, that protesters wouldn't have left or, there was no downside. So you asked for a story that wasn't in the book.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I've ever shared that story with anyone, but I don't think I have. So I hope you love it.
So it was so good. And it connects for me, at least, kind of a through line, at least of what I've been experiencing of your life and the way you operate and whatnot. And it's just this idea of like authentic connection, right? And like, cause that's the other thing that is really something I hope you're proud of. Cause I feel it and I'm sure others do, but like you're connected with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet, people that you would, all these other humans want to get to know and so forth. But you don't strike me like there's no ego there with those connections. It's like you're actually connecting with the human on the other side. And it seems like, it's not like this timeline thing, like, oh yeah, I want to meet here and we're just going to jam in some sort of opportunity. Like you let things play out. Right. Is that true, or am I like? Are you?
Yeah, it's definitely. It's totally true. I think at the beginning, I was definitely very transaction focused. I was casino floor Elliott. You need watches. You need this. What do you want to buy? I got ads. But I was always having a lot of fun. I was always enjoying the process, and I think as I learned over the years. The most important thing is just, go on a learning safari, go enjoy, see where each connection leads, because every connection can be exponential. And I think I've really not made any effort for many, many years to have, what they call a cherished outcome. Don't have, I try to not, definitely not with relationships of where a relationship would go. I just try to be as friendly to every imaginable person as I can. I try to be as memorable and eccentric and out there and different and just build relationships with everybody. And through all the random relationships, so many random great things happen that I would just never expect. And, Yeah, like I said at the beginning, in general, I just try to have fun. I'm very, very grateful for everything. I'm pretty humorous. I just really enjoy the whole process. I'm not at all driven by results or outcomes.
Hmm.
It's okay to set goals of, dreams you have, but it's not good to be somebody who's just focused on if I hit the goal or not. Like you
Yeah.
set your goals, but then you just have the best time trying to, create everything.
Hey, you're living the journey. I mean, everyone says this and it always sounds cliche, but I mean, really, I mean, that's what it is. Like if you can soak up, joy and happiness and learn and grow and have a good time right in the present. I mean, like there's no downside there, right? Like
I,
it's,
yeah,
yeah.
there's a really very short, funny story, but it's in the book. But when I dropped out of college, I really wanted to fit in, and I was so embarrassed I dropped out of college. I wore a suit and tie every single day. I thought nobody would respect me. And they say, where'd you go to college? I'd say, I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. They're like, what year did you finish? Did you graduate? I'd say, oh, I finished in 2006.
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't say graduate. And
Yeah. I
I
started
thought
in
that,
2005.
yeah. And I went to this meeting to sell someone ads, as I did. And, the meeting was over like a lunch at the Palm restaurant, or
Okay.
is this fancy restaurant in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. And I literally had a suit, like a dark suit and white shirt and a tie. And the guy, I sit down and he says, Elliott, you got to take that jacket off. Like, okay. And he's like, can you take the tie off? Okay. Unbutton the top two buttons. Okay. Can you roll up your sleeves? Okay. He orders 2 beers and like a thing of cheesy fries. He's like, you're not authentic. Like, I don't want to talk to like the, sales guy who's just trying to like get me for a buck. He said, you seem awesome. It sounds like you dropped out of school. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I built my own business. He was like 60 years old,
Sure.
50 years old. He's like, keep your sleeves rolled up and just tell me about school and dropping out and what you're building and what your dreams are. And he goes, at the end, in the last 10 minutes, you can tell me what you want to sell me. So we just had this is like the first time ever in my life after all these years, I'd had just like an authentic conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we got along great. And at the end, he said, all right, what do you want to sell me? I said, well, I thought your company could benefit from this at this price. He said, how about that price? I said, how about we tweak it like this? He said, it's done. Great. I'll send you a check tomorrow. Let's go. We're going to be doing business for a long, long time.
What a life lesson. Yeah.
I had a lot of those experiences that I internalized and like I really took to my heart, and I started to evolve and I started to grow up, and our book and like, it really is a coming of age story, right?
Yeah.
I really was like that. And by listening to people and, we have a, chapter title when you know how to listen, everyone is a guru.
Mm-hmm.
This was just a random lunch in Tyson's Corner in Northern Virginia, right? But it's like these little lessons, like I really listened. I wasn't offended. I didn't say, who's this guy to tell me how to drive? I thought, he's right. So I'm going to change.
Love it. I love it. Well, last question for you, sir. I mean, I'd love to just know, for you, like where's that place where you have like mental bliss? It's like when you're sitting back and you're like, damn, life is pretty amazing. Like, what are you doing? What's the surrounding? What's that for you?
Well, one of the realizations everyone needs to have is, it's very easy to be the Zen master or the Buddha when you're on vacation or on the mountaintop or after you close a deal. And of course, the real art is, how are you when your kid wakes you up in the middle of the night, or when everything's going wrong, or it's the toughest times of your business. Are you moody and grumpy and tough to be around? Or do you keep that humor and that positive energy and that spirit? It has to be authentic, but do you keep it in those times?
Yeah.
Do you embrace the tough times for what they are? And, there's something about my personality that I've always had awareness of that. And, you know, I've never been waiting for anything. I'm not waiting for a result to, well, now go do this fun thing, or, I have to be a certain level of success before I can mentor someone. Like I've been, mentoring younger people for as long as I can remember. As soon as I learned the first thing, I was like, oh my gosh, this crazy secret about, I don't have to wear a suit and tie anymore. I can just be authentic. I got to call these 3 people and tell them this secret. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So I think, for me, I'm always trying to find that within, the life and experience that I'm having. And, I have a pretty energetic out there personality that can be a bit up and down. And so I started meditating probably like 10 years ago, and that definitely rewired my entire brain.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not up and down anymore, right? I was more like an early 20s thing. And then I read a lot of books. I think that's probably like one of the biggest things is, every single night, if I can, I basically every night, I decompress and I read for, half an hour to 2 hours, depending on how good and page turning the book is.
Oh,
so I definitely
pressure's on, because I know you've got mine waiting for you.
Oh yeah. I cannot wait to read your book. It's literally sitting. I cannot wait. As soon as I'm back in Utah at Powder Mountain, I'm going to read it. But yeah, just trying to do all those things every day, cooking, all the simple pleasures, and your work is not what defines you. It's not your whole life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's who I am.
Amazing. Well, full circle to the opening question of who you are, actually, that kind of fun, energetic human, but mixed with creating, time for some stillness of the mind and the present and whatnot. Man, it's been so nice. I mean, I really, really value you going out there, putting your story out, doing all the work that you lead in this world, and making the time to be on the show. And of course, to borrow some language from another mutual friend of ours, Ben Nimton, but the ripple effect of everything that you and the team has started and have and continue to put out there just affects so many people in such a great way that a huge thanks for that.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it.
Awesome.